My name is Amy O'Leary and thanks a million for having me here. I'm absolutely nuts about marketing, so just a little bit about me. From my accent you can probably tell I'm not from Dublin, I am from Cork. So I made the big move to the big smoke this time last year. I got the opportunity to work with a brand that I've admired for ages, Keoghs crisps. So when they offered me the job, I kind of jumped at the opportunity. So made the big move, and the second thing about me is I'm absolutely mad about food. I'm a big foodie, so makes the day job a lot easier. Okay, just a little bit of background. I suppose I've worked in events from a branding point of view since 2011. So I actually studied accounting in college for 4 years and decided that was not for me, sitting at a desk every day. I liked being out and about, meeting people as best I could. So I was working with Ballymoley Relish, which is an Irish-owned business as well, making country relish down in Cork. So started with them around 2011, stayed with them right through college as a brand ambassador, and then left college and I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? I love being out and about, so I decided to become an independent marketer. That allowed me to work with clients like Ballymoley Relish, startups like Boutique Bake, so just trying to get brand awareness through tastings and events. I worked a bit with Dermot O'Rourke creating food and fitness events, so basically pop-up shops. She was an Olympic athlete trying to break in after her career into the eventing space. And Keoghs Fruit, which is a Dublin-based fruit company. So did a 3-month stint with them last summer. We did 13 events in 3 months, which was quite intense. So finished that last year, and that led to where I am today, which is Keoghs Crisps. So I'm currently brand manager there. That's me on the John Deere. It's literally tractors, spuds and crisps. And that's us at Bloom, which is a really, really busy event for us. So basically I'm going to talk about how we use as a brand, how we use events to kind of power our brand and use it to build awareness. So the power of events, which is why we're all here. So hopefully if you are a brand owner or a brand manager, you'll be able to relate to some of this. But if you're organising events and you're trying to target brands, hopefully you'll kind of get an edge of why we as brands want to be at your events. So awareness, if you can create a space where you can get maximum awareness for your brand, then you've hit the nail on the head. We try to meet as many people as possible in a short period of time. The 12-month calendar for businesses just flies. So the summer period in Dublin is just event after event after event. So it's great for creating visibility. We plan sometimes now, this is trial and error, sometimes we get really small spaces. So if you can plan where you are in the event, pre-event, and try and maximise your visibility through banners, balloons, branded maps to hand to people as they go in, anything to kind of increase your visibility and kind of get ahead of other brands. Your branding, creating a consistent look and feel that you can literally works logistically and works for your staff is really, really important. There's no point creating this big structure, but you can't fit it in a van to get up the road. Talkability, fulfill those nutritional bars. We're really, really good at creating that talkability at events. They had brand ambassadors going around, they had activations going on. So it was creating that buzz and people wanted to find their stand. So I think they were a really good case of kind of creating that talkability at an event. It can be as simple as we use literally spud bags going around at events, and people are like, where did you get that spud bag? And you're like, oh, it's Keoghs, it's around the corner, go find it. So if you can create something that's a little bit quirky, people have spud bags in their houses every day, but put it in a different scenario and they want to talk about it. Be engaging. So everyone is fighting for engagement, whether it's trying to get people to post on social. It can be as simple as having your staff really, really well trained and be your brand advocates for you. So we would always make sure that all our staff are really happy, really aware of the brand and kind of communicating that point, and the consumers will always remember that. So tasting the product and a happy staff is always a good way to create that awareness. Trial. You want as many people at an event to try your product as possible. So that is a good reason why we would go to events, to get the reach. So we've tried in-store tastings, which are great, but to maximise reach, going to an event is a really, really easy way to get in front of a lot of people. You can also specifically target an audience, so whether it's a food or drink event, whether it's a food or fitness event, you can actually get your target customer in one place altogether. So that's a good kind of a starting point when you're looking at what event you should be at. Or if you're approaching a brand from an events company, always have the target audience and the reach and the footfall. That's a good way to kind of rope them in. As well, you should never underestimate the instant feedback you get from customers. So brands spend thousands on getting research in. Don't underestimate your customers right there in front of you at an event. You literally get feedback of them trialing your product. So that's definitely not to be undermined. And then consideration. So you're trying to get them to consider buying your product, whether it's a product that they eat or a service. You want them to kind of walk away from your stand at an event and kind of have that consideration in the back of their head. And then purchase. Let's be honest, the only reason brands are at any event is to create that purchase power. If we don't get purchase at the end of it, guaranteed we won't come back to that event. When I target events, I try to target an area that we're near stores around the place to kind of increase that purchasing power. So at stands, I'd always try to sell product at it because it creates that buying habit. It's also a really good sign to see if people will actually believe in your product and think it's worth buying. And so many people will stand there and go, yeah, it's a really nice product, but will you actually pay for it is the actual real answer. And what I've found is getting out in the street and giving around free samples does work to a certain extent, but if you can get them to pay or do something for the product, they'll actually respect and enjoy the product a lot more. And it creates that buzz about your product, and you know the consumer genuinely cares and would probably repeat purchase. Otherwise, you don't know what consumer is actually getting your product into the hand. It does kill me when you see free product handed around and then just thrown in the bin or thrown on the floor, and it's just not respected. So I think targeting the right events for your product is really, really important. But in simple terms, we are all there to connect. Digital is great, and digital has really, really helped brands, but never underestimate the actual physical getting out there, the hard slog that has been there since the start of time, getting out, meeting your customer face to face. We would always make sure that one of the owners shows up one day at an event just to meet the customers and really, really try to connect with them. So that's kind of what we're all trying to do really when we're organising events. How we do it as a brand. Now, events people probably hate this because I'm constantly ringing going, okay, how can we get more attention from this brand? How can we get more adverse space? How can we get it working more for us? So I try to put myself in the consumer's shoes and think about the occasion. So Taste of Dublin is a really, really good example. How can you create your brand that fits into the consumer there when they're out with their friends and they're having a good time? You don't want to be overselling, but how can you kind of fit that need of them? Do you need to have like a chill out zone for them? How can you grab their attention to kind of get them over with their friends? Because it just depends on the event, but I would always try to think of the consumer in that occasion and that event, and then think of how you can grab their attention. Branding, be smart about your branding. Fever Tree do it really well, this Instagrammable swing that is basically free social media. I think you can be smart and get your brand out there, but in a subtle way, so that's important. And then communication, especially in the events business, there's 1,000,001 messages that you could get out there, and there's so much happening in an event space, so be really, really clear on your comms message and keep it concise. Hashtags are still in, they're still trending, so if you can have a short, snappy hashtag to kind of get the community going, that always works. But yeah, the communications piece, you could talk about 1,000,001 things, but try to keep it clear. If you did want to ask a consumer at an event or leaving, what is the one thing you'd want them to say back to you? And that's kind of always a learning for us. And we would ask them. And a marketing 360, so whether you're in an events business, you have to remember from a brand's point of view, this is just one avenue of marketing for us. So it has to fit into an overall 360 strategy. So this is an example when I worked in Ballymaloe, we got a listing 3 years ago in Tesco in the UK for 800 stores. And we were like, okay, how are we going to reach the whole of the UK with zero budget? So we came up with a campaign. Now, we couldn't host events ourselves in England. We just run through all of our budget. So we hopped on the bandwagon of all the country shows around England, and we created the Grand Taste Tour. So we kind of took a little bit of ownership over it, and we said, right, we're going to hit 8 events all around England. We're going to travel them in a jeep and a caravan, and we're going to create the Grand Taste Tour. And we invited everyone on digital to follow our tour. So that was one thing that we did to kind of take a little bit of ownership over the events, because we couldn't hold one big event. It would just cost us too much money. So people just engaged through sending in videos and pictures of their sandwiches that they made. They came and met us at events, and we did tastings in store. So that was kind of a full 360 plan to kind of maximise our benefit of going to each event, because they are quite expensive. And then I just want to talk a little bit about hosting events versus exhibiting. So as a brand, the big question is, do we just throw one big event ourselves? Or should we go to 6 different events that are held by different people? I think you have to have a clear message. So if it's a good fit, so for example, Keoghs 3 years ago partnered with Country Crest, which is another potato company. They decided that it was National Potato Day and they wanted to do a big celebration. We wanted to get the nation eating more spuds. So that was a clear message that we wanted to achieve. So we hosted an event because nobody else was hosting a potato event. So if we wanted it to happen, we had to do it ourselves. So that made sense for us. But for every other event, we are not an entertainment company, and we are not an events company. We know how hard it is to logistically pull it off. So we do see the benefit in going to events, even though we question budget and how many on price and what can we get from it. We do value that you're the ones organising the event. That's your strength. You have the audience. You do all the hard labour and work. And sometimes showing up, the benefit for us is that we have the audience at the palm of our hand, and we just have to make sure that our brand looks well, and it's cost benefit for us. So that would be kind of the weighing up option of us just hosting an event ourselves versus exhibiting. And just my top tips for events: have a clear purpose and comms message. There's nothing worse than getting a brief in from an events company and them saying, we're holding an event and we have 10,000 exhibitors, or we have 30,000 people attending, but there's not a clear message on what the actual event is. So I want to know that we've targeted this audience in this demographic, this is where the ticket sales are going, and that the comms message is very clear. Because for me, as a brand manager trying to protect a brand, I don't want to show up and waste resources and show up to an event that is badly organised, or that I don't know who my target market is, because that could be damaging to my brand. And then I assign budget. So that's kind of more from a brand point of view. I'd always have a budget in mind for events, and we can't really go above that. But what does help, if you allow them to sell at the event, that's always a positive for us. And debrief as soon as possible after the event. Sometimes we can just keep going and it's like a rat race. But I would get every staff member, whether it's somebody that's back at home that's stocking the van, they need to be involved in the debrief afterwards, because there's little insights that you can pick up. Nurture and train your staff. This is something I really believe in, and Sam will probably talk about this a little bit more, but they are your brand advocates, and whether they're people helping out at the events to make sure that everything runs smoothly, they're the ones that people will remember at the end of the day. So you want all your staff singing off the one hymn sheet, and they're the ones that will have the valuable feedback and insights for you. So really nurture and train them, because people buy from people, and that's kind of the one message. So that's kind of it from me. So if you have any questions, please feel free. I probably flew through that. Yep.
So the event debrief, do you have like a fixed agenda for that, or can you walk us through what's...
Yeah, so at the end of every single day of an event, whether it's 1 day or 5 days, every staff member that's on the stand that day would get a sheet, and we have questions, specific questions. So what was the best deal of the day that people bought into? What were the top 3 comments that you received on that day? What were the staff like and the organising event like to deal with? What were the logistics like on the day? So did you have to walk 3 hours to get to the bathroom, or was there a big queue? So we actually debrief on all of that, because when we go back, I would always give feedback to the event organisers then afterwards as well and go, look, the stand location was absolutely great, but we actually had problems, like simple things like we had to have an extra member of staff on the second day because the toilets were so far from our stand that it was just too long, or there was nowhere for our staff to have breaks. So the simple things like that on the day, because once you ask, especially like events, you have younger people working that are just kind of roped in from everywhere. And if you don't catch them on the day, it goes out of their head. Whereas on the day, they're like, oh yeah, that happened. And then afterwards, post-event, then have a big debrief of everyone in the business, or else get their feedback in some way. And then you just bash through everything. And then you make a plan and say for next year, then go, okay, should we do this event? We had these problems, what can we do to make it better? But if from an events company, if you don't do it already, I would always ask the people exhibiting, or pick a handful of people to go, can I have feedback on how you think the event went? Because we're your customers. And if there's little things that you can help to improve your service, then, you know, and I don't think events businesses do it enough. They know, like we would openly go back, and you don't want to always go back with complaints, because we could go back with positive feedback as well. So it's kind of opening that channel for conversation, because that's how you gain more customers, especially in the food industry. Everyone talks. We all have to be at the same ones. So yeah, that's one piece of advice.
No?
We're all good?
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem, thank you.